My dear student, before initiating the sample selection procedure, we have to validate the selection process and we have to measure the reliability of the selection process as well. So first talk about the validation of the selection procedure. A decision to hire or not to hire require line manager and the HR manager to clearly identify the criteria. It is very important to identify the criteria whether we have to hire or whether we not to hire the person. And we have to distinguish successful from unsuccessful job performance and to use only predictive measure of job success that are valid and that are reliable. So it is important to use the predictive measure which are valid as well as reliable. Without a systemic approach that examines validity and reliability, no relationship can be demonstrated between selection criteria and selection predictors. So we have to develop a relationship. We have to determine a relationship. And that relationship can be determined only when we will examine validity and reliability of selection predictors and criteria. So first of all, we need to know that what is validity? It is the ability of a test or other selection techniques to measure what it's set out to measure. What we are measuring, whether we are measuring the same concept or we are measuring a different concept, this is called as validity, and is the ability of a test or other selection techniques to measure what it's set out to measure. So predictor, it is a selection criterion such as the level of education or scores on intelligence test. What is the level of education? It can be a predictor. What is the score on intelligence test? It can be a predictor. These predictors can measure the success of the job of any candidate in a particular organization. So there is another concept which is important to understand, and it is called as correlation coefficient. It is a statistical procedure showing the strength of the relationship between two variables. It shows the strength of the relationship, that how two variables are associated with each other. For example, between one employee test score and on the job performance. If someone is performing good on one particular employment test, there are chances that that person would be perform better on the job as well. So it measures the relationship, it measures the association of employment test with the job performance. Then there's another concept which is also important in validity called as a concurrent validity. This involves identifying a criterion predictor. For example, an aptitude test such as mechanical reasoning and giving it to a group of existing employees, correlating their score with their job performance. You have an existing employee in the organization, give that aptitude test to those employees, and if that score of the test would correlate with the job performance of their existing employees, it means that it is acceptable. If an acceptable correlation exists between two things, means between the score and the job performance, the criterion predictor can be used in selection of a new employees as well. And if there is no correlation exists, it means never use such kind of employment test or aptitude test or intelligence test for the new employee selection. Then there is a concept of predictive validity to determine whether a criterion predictor actually predict acceptable job performance. And the criterion predictor is administered to all applicants, but the test scores are ignored or when making the selection decision after a specified period of time. So for example, 6 months, the results are reviewed and correlated with a criterion such as job performance. If the validity coefficient is satisfactory, the predictor can be used in a selection process in the future. And if it is not relevant, if it is not satisfactory, then you cannot use such kind of predictors in the selection process in the future. So while often regarded as the more scientific of the two approaches, predictive validity tend to be the time consuming and expensive. Yes, two issues. One is the time and second is the cost. So we can use it, but it is time consuming and expensive. In addition, because of original predictive results are ignored, it means that there is an increased risk that incompetent personnel hired. So if you would not use the original predictive results and you will ignore the original predictive result, it means that there is a higher risk that you would hire an incompetent personnel in the organization. But therefore, I think you have to keep things in mind, that you have to use the predictive test, you have to use the relevant and most appropriate test whenever you have to adopt any particular selection procedure in the organization. If you would use appropriate test with high correlation coefficient, then there are chances that you would hire competent employee in your organization. So, my dear student, validation of the selection procedure is a very important concept, and whenever you have to design or adopted any employment test, any interviewing technique, anything, any assessment technique for hiring a new person, you have to keep validation of selection procedure in mind.